Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are lighting a match and throwing it right into the powder keg.
We really are. We are tackling a topic today that most people are, terrified to even whisper about at the dinner table.
Let alone discuss out in the open.
Right. It's one of those subjects where just bringing it up can get you labeled. But the data we have in front of us, the data we are unpacking today, is impossible to ignore.
Exactly. We're looking at a premise that is honestly pretty provocative. Imagine this quote to start us off. The world is burning, and the arsonists are holding fire extinguishers.
That is the opening salvo from the ebook we are breaking down today. It's called Emotional Hurricane Danger to Life, Women, Wet and Wild.
Written by Conrad Reicher.
Yes, Conrad Reicher, published in 2025. And look, before we go any further, I have to say this. If you enjoy us diving into these forbidden topic stuff you absolutely will not hear on the mainstream news, do us a massive favor right now. Hit that like button and subscribe to the show.
Seriously, do it now. It helps us keep the lights on and keeps these deep dives coming.
Because today we are diving into an ebook that is ultra long, incisive, and frankly, fascinating. It's a complete diagnosis of Western decline that pulls absolutely no punches.
And when I say ultra long, I mean, this guy has done the homework. The footnotes alone are extensive.
Reicher's work here is dense. It is a curated deep dive specifically for men who look around at the world today, at the family courts, the HR departments, the culture at large, and feel like the game is fundamentally rigged.
So if you are someone in the men's rights space, or you identify with the red-pilled manosphere, this book is speaking directly to those concerns. It explains who is moving the goalposts and why.
The mission today is to understand the history of our institutions. We're talking law, education, the workplace. We want to see what they looked like before they were, as Reicher puts it, captured by feminists and Marxists.
But I want to be clear right up front. We aren't taking sides here. We are analyzing his argument and impartially reporting what is in the text.
Right, and his core argument is that logic has been systematically replaced by emotion as the governing principle of the West.
And just a heads up, we're going to cover a ton of ground today, from custody battles to the collapse of corporate competence.
But Reicher has this massive arsenal of facts and logic that we simply cannot fit into one conversation.
No way, we'd be here for 10 hours.
Exactly. So if you want the full download, the raw data, you need to go to Amazon Kindle or Google Playbooks right now and buy Emotional Hurricane. We're giving you the map, but the book is the territory.
Let's get into it. Reicher starts with the legal system. He calls it the cradle of chaos. Now, usually when we think of the law, we think of blindness, Lady Justice, the scales, total objectivity.
But Reicher argues that the blindfold has been ripped off. He says the legal system has fundamentally shifted from seeking justice to operating on what he terms maternal supremacy.
He actually calls it the Tears Tribunal, right?
The Tears Tribunal, yes.
That's a really strong label. Define that for me based on his text. Is he saying women just cry their way out of trouble?
It's more systemic than that. Reicher says it's not just about the act of crying. It's about the massive legal weight given to female emotion. The central argument is that the legal system has been engineered to prioritize female emotion over male evidence.
Okay, so feeling trumps fact.
Precisely. And he points to Scandinavia to prove this. Now, Scandinavia is often held up in the West as this perfect beacon of equality. We're always told to be more like Sweden or Denmark.
Right, the ultimate egalitarian utopia.
But when you drill down into the family courts there, Reicher pulls stats showing they are awarding 80 to 90% of child custody to mothers.
80 to 90%. I mean, that is statistically impossible if the system were truly neutral.
That's his point. That's not a margin of error. That is a policy. And Reicher illustrates this with a really harrowing case study of the Danish man named Lars Jensen.
I remember reading this part. It really stuck with me.
Yeah, so in 2019, his wife filed for divorce. Now, usually you'd expect a concrete reason. Infidelity, financial ruin, physical abuse.
Right.
Her reason was that she claimed he looked at her funny.
Wait, hold on. He looked at her funny. That was the actual legal basis.
That was the catalyst for the separation. But here is the kicker. Reicher notes there was zero evidence of physical abuse, no neglect, no psychological evaluation, no witness testimony at all.
It's just her feeling.
Just her feeling of being unsafe due to a look. And based on that vibe, literally just a subjective feeling, the court denied him visitation with his 2 children for 3 years.
That is terrifying. You lose your kids because of a subjective interpretation of your facial expression. That means there is literally no defense. How do you prove you didn't look at someone a certain way?
You can't, and that is the Tears Tribunal in action. Reicher links this to the tender years doctrine. Historically, this was a legal presumption that young children, usually under 4, were best cared for by their mothers.
Which made sense in a completely different era.
Right. But Riker argues it has mutated into something much darker today. He calls it the cry-bully phenomenon.
The cry bully. I've heard that term floating around the internet before. It's this idea that the person crying is actually the one wielding the power. It flips the script on who the victim is.
Exactly. Riker says that in the courtroom, female emotion overrides due process. If a woman claims emotional distress, it's treated as a capital offense committed by the man. It shuts down the logic of the entire proceeding.
And he contrasts how the state treats mothers versus fathers in this context, right?
He does. In Denmark, he talks about the motherhood premium. Single moms get housing, childcare subsidies, welfare. The state basically steps in as the provider.
And the dads. If the mom is getting the premium, what is the dad getting in this scenario?
The bill. Riker describes the system's view of fathers as ATMs with expiration dates.
Wow. ATMs with expiration dates.
If you're a dad, you pay. If you're denied visitation, you still pay. It's what he calls custody without contact. You are financially obligated to a child you are legally prevented from seeing.
It feels like a war on fatherhood, to put it bluntly. It's systematically isolating men from their lineage.
Riker argues it is exactly that. He tells the story of Dr. James Turner, a pediatrician in Ontario. I want you to picture this guy. He saves kids' lives for a living. He is highly educated, stable, a total pillar of the community.
Sounds like the ideal father.
Right. Well, he lost full custody of his own twins. Why? Because his wife accused him of emotional neglect.
Emotional neglect is such a slippery term. Did that mean he wasn't hugging them enough or he was cold?
No. It literally meant he was at work. He was working long hours to support the family, paying for the house, the lifestyle, paying for his wife's master's degree. The court ruled that his work ethic made him an absentee father.
So the system punishes men for the very thing it demands of them, being a provider.
That is a critical point Riker makes. It's a double bind. You work hard to provide, you lose your kids for being absent. You don't work, you're a deadbeat, and you lose your kids for being broke. You literally cannot win.
And the consequence, according to the book, isn't just a bunch of sad dads. It's the systemic removal of fathers from the home.
Riker frames it as society treating fatherhood as a disposable accessory. And he argues this is leading directly to societal collapse because we're raising entire generations without that paternal structure and discipline.
Okay, so that's the courts. It's the cradle of chaos. But Riker's thesis is that this emotion over logic dynamic hasn't stayed in the courtroom. It's metastasized. It's moved to the boardroom.
This is where it gets really interesting for anyone working in corporate America today. If you've ever sat through an HR seminar and felt like you were in a re-education camp, this section is going to resonate with you. Riker uses the term the emotional cartel.
The emotional cartel. That implies a monopoly, like a coordinated effort to control the market of behavior.
Precisely. It refers to the takeover of HR departments and corporate leadership by this specific ideology. He cites a Harvard Business Review study from 2022. It claimed that women in leadership roles are 68% more likely to fire male subordinates after an emotional outburst.
Wait, clarify that for me. The boss has the outburst and the guy gets fired.
Or the guy doesn't react appropriately to her outburst. It's all about emotional compliance. Riker argues that HR is no longer about human resources. He says it's about human repression.
Human repression?
Yeah, it's no longer about whether you hit your sales targets. It's about whether you match the emotional frequency of the room.
I think a lot of guys feel that in the workplace. You walk on eggshells, you stop making jokes, you keep your head down because you don't want to be called into the office for a vibe check.
He calls it the rise of empathy audits and tone policing. You can say something completely neutral, completely factual. Maybe you're critiquing a project timeline. But if a female colleague feels your tone was aggressive, you're in trouble.
It's the cornrows controversy he mentions.
Exactly. Riker uses this example of a teacher in Texas.
I remember seeing headlines about this. It was all over social media. Remind us of the details from the book.
A male teacher was suspended, not for what he said. He didn't use a slur. He didn't yell. But a student filmed him and claimed his tone was racially charged. It was purely an interpretation of his voice and inflection.
So it's totally subjective.
Completely. Riker argues that under this system, a man's neutral statement is labeled toxic, while female screaming is labeled passion. It's a massive double standard on how emotion is regulated.
It seems like the death of merit. It's not about who does the job best anymore. It's about who navigates the feelings best.
Riker draws a really stark comparison between nations to prove this point. He compares Finland and Sweden. Now, they are neighbors, very similar cultures historically.
Right.
But he says Finland is currently building nuclear reactors. They are focusing on energy, physics, hard reality. Meanwhile, Sweden is funding cry rooms and inclusive design workshops.
Cry rooms. Literally.
Literally, space is designed for emotional release in professional settings. His argument is that equity is openly anti-merit. You're replacing competence with compassion and identity politics.
And you can't rent a power grid on empathy.
That's his exact warning. Physics doesn't care about your feelings.
That's the thing. When you replace competence with feelings, bridges fall down, systems fail. But surely Riker isn't suggesting this is just accidental. He seems to frame this as a political strategy.
He does, and this leads to the core of Riker's thesis on the political landscape. He argues that what we call leftism isn't really a political ideology anymore. It's not about tax rates or trade policy.
What is it then, according to him?
He calls it a psychological profile, specifically the cult of feelings. He argues it's dominated by emotional immaturity and a maternal archetype gone feral.
Maternal archetype gone feral. That is a heavy phrase. I assume maternal usually means nurturing, protecting. How does it go feral?
When the instinct to protect becomes an instinct to smother and control, it's safety at the cost of freedom. He points to the Hurt Speech Directive in the EU as an example.
What is that?
This is actual legislation that criminalizes statements that cause emotional discomfort. Riker's point is that we've moved from "I disagree with you" to "you are hurting me by speaking," and the law is now backing that up with the threat of jail time.
It's weaponized fragility. I am hurt, therefore you are a criminal.
And it's heavily monetized. This is a huge part of the book, the martyr economy. Riker breaks down the $11 billion self-care industry. He says women are monetizing victimhood. Trauma is the new currency. If you have trauma, you have status.
There's that story in the book about the woman in Sedona. It sounded almost like a parody, but he presents it as real.
Right, the woman clearing trauma with a singing bowl while heavily medicated on pharmaceuticals. Riker isn't just mocking this, he's pointing to the data to back it up.
The CBC data.
Yes. He cites CDC data showing women consume 76% of all antidepressants. His argument is that society is being run by the most emotionally unstable demographic, and we're calling it leadership.
And to maintain that leadership, they have to control the language. This part of the book blew my mind. Linguistic vandalism.
It's the engineering of language to control thought. If you control the words, you control the debate entirely. The prime example he gives is the University of Oregon banning the word mother in official communications.
Right, in favor of birthing person.
Eh.
It sounds so clinical. It sounds like you're a machine in a factory.
Riker argues it erases the sacred duty of motherhood. It strips the role of its honor and reduces it to a mere biological function, all in the name of inclusion. He says it deconstructs the family unit even at the level of vocabulary.
So let's recap where we are in his argument. We've got a broken legal system, a hostile workplace, and a culture that worships feelings over facts. What is this doing to the actual economy? Because Riker talks about the Barbie economy.
This is where the rubber meets the road. Riker argues that consumerism has become a coping mechanism for this emotional void. He talks about female-led consumerist death spirals.
I've seen those Shein hauls on social media.
Yeah.
People buying huge bags of cheap clothes they never even wear.
Landfill theater, he calls it. Buying cheap goods for a quick dopamine hit, wearing them once and throwing them away. He points out that women control 85% of consumer spending in the US. They are the engine of consumption.
But, and this is the controversial part we need to report carefully, he claims they are net negative taxpayers.
Yes. Break that down for the listener.
Riker's economic claim is that as a demographic group, when you subtract the government services consumed from the taxes paid, the balance is negative.
Exactly. Riker argues that men are largely paying the taxes that fund the hard infrastructure, the roads, the power grids, the defense, while women are spending the money that drives the consumer economy.
So it's an imbalance of production versus consumption. One group builds and maintains, the other consumes.
That's the argument. But the deeper economic collapse he points to isn't just about spending habits, it's demographic. It's the birth strike.
We're seeing this everywhere. Japan, South Korea, the West. Birth rates are plummeting way below replacement levels.
And Riker blames this squarely on hypergamy.
Define hypergamy for the listener who might not be familiar with the term.
It's the evolutionary instinct to date and marry up, across and up the dominance hierarchy. Riker argues that modern women are endlessly chasing status and refusing to settle for good, average men.
They're waiting for a Prince Charming who makes six figures, is 6 feet tall, and emotionally available.
But that guy either doesn't exist, or he has options and doesn't want them.
It's the life plan trap. You know, you are told you can have it all: the career, the travel, the independence.
And Riker says it ends with lonely women who have trophy careers but zero legacy, no family, just endless consumption. They prioritize the boardroom over the nursery, and according to Riker, civilization pays the price.
It's a really grim picture of a society that is eating itself. But this is the deep dive, and we always look for the path forward presented in the sources. Riker doesn't just complain, he talks about a masculine revival.
This is probably the most fascinating shift he documents. It's what men are doing in response to all of this. They're opting out. He calls them the hikikomori of the West.
Now, usually we think of hikikomori as those Japanese guys who lock themselves in their bedrooms and play video games for 10 years. It's usually seen as a failure to launch.
But Riker argues Western men are doing it differently. They aren't hiding out of weakness. They're disengaging out of pure strategy. He tells the story of a man in Bozeman, Montana.
The guy who hasn't spoken to a woman in 2 years.
That's the one. He moved to a cabin, bought a generator, taught himself to weld. And Riker claims this man has never been happier. His cortisol levels, his stress hormones, absolutely plummeted. He isn't depressed, he's liberated.
He's walked away from the game.
Winning by quitting. That's Riker's explicit advice to his readers. Disengage from the rigged game. We're seeing this trend in the rise of men's sheds and trade schools. Enrollment in trades is up 35%.
Men are moving to rural areas to escape what Riker calls feminist city councils.
They're building parallel structures. They're rejecting the apology tour. They aren't apologizing for being men anymore. Riker advocates for stoicism, building real value with your hands and absolutely refusing to pay the emotional tax that society demands.
It's a really powerful image. The system keeps demanding you participate, demanding you apologize, demanding you validate these feelings. And these guys are just saying no.
And that no is the most powerful word in the English language right now. Riker suggests that if enough men simply stop dating women who don't respect them, stop working for companies that hate them, stop engaging with a culture that vilifies them, the system collapses under its own weight.
Because it relies on male participation to function.
Precisely.
Wow. It shifts the power dynamic completely. You don't have to fight the system, you just have to starve it.
Exactly.
Okay, let's bring this home. This deep dive into emotional hurricane has been intense. We've covered the Tears Tribunal, the emotional cartel, the birth strike.
It's a heavy load. Riker's thesis is that this is a systemic dismantling of logic and reason. But clarity is the first step to resistance. You can't fight a hurricane if you don't know which way the wind is blowing.
Absolutely. And I want to leave you, the listener, with this final thought. Riker describes a silent revolution. It's not a protest march. It's not a riot. It's millions of men quietly closing their wallets, turning their backs, and walking away to build something of their own.
It's the sound of the engine of the West being turned off by the mechanics who built it.
That is a haunting image to mull over. And look, we have barely scratched the surface of what is in this book. Riker has charts, data, hundreds of footnotes, and stories we just couldn't get to today. We didn't even touch on the specific legislation changes in the UK or the chapters on media manipulation.
If you want the full Red Pill download, if you want the actual ammunition to understand exactly what is happening around you, you need to buy Emotional Hurricane Danger to Life, Women Wet and Wild.
Don't wait on this. Go to Amazon Kindle or Google Play Books right now. Search for it, buy it, read it. It's the only way to get the full picture.
And make sure you follow the author for updates. He's at Conrad Riker on Substack. That's conradriker.substack.com. And he is on Twitter as well. He's constantly putting out new analysis that tracks these trends in real time.
Definitely worth a follow. All right, that's it for this deep dive. If this discussion woke you up, hit like, make sure you're subscribed, and share this with a friend who needs to hear it. The world might be burning, but you don't have to burn with it.
Stay stoic.
We'll see you next time.